All right, friends, the course is Enlightenment and Autonomy. Here's our recommended text following our Plato reading. This is the prop, although go get it. I mean, this is good. I haven't read the whole thing here, though. The Promise of Happiness by Sara Ahmed. Here is the text that I'd encourage you to read if you are shorter on time. This is the thing that I've taught from. This is an article that comes from this book, published in the journal Signs by Sara Ahmed, and the article is called Killing Joy, Feminism and the History of Happiness. Now, it starts by discussing happiness as the summum bonum, the greatest good, the thing that we're pursuing with our lives. And it challenges the role of happiness as this non-controversial, desirable thing that we are all pursuing. And it's interesting, and it puts this as a big controversial thing. Let's circle back to that at the end. So before we should talk about whether we are all seeking happiness, whether we should all be seeking happiness, let's talk about society's messaging about happiness. Sara Ahmed draws our attention to the way that certain things become associated with happiness. And we want to distinguish here between promised happiness and experienced happiness. The example Ahmed gives of experienced happiness, she pulls from John Locke, where he talks about tasting grapes and being delighted by the grapes. What a boring example, but we experience it. We know the grapes are good. We know what the grapes are doing to us. We know that they're desirable. On the other hand, our lives are filled with messaging, advertisement, education, upbringing, religion. I mean, we're filled with messaging, shadows on the wall, right? About what's going to make us happy, which things worth pursuing, which way of living is going to get you happiness. And our parents do this the most. And of course they do. I mean, it's not even malicious, but our parents do this the most. They want happiness for us. They tell us happiness lies that way. And then we are expected to go that way. And if we don't go that way, what are we doing? We're living crazy lives. But here's the thing. Promised happiness doesn't always come through for us. It actually rarely comes through for us. And if we think about where this messaging comes from, if we think about how flat-footed the image of the happy housewife with a pie, freshly baked pie, wearing the apron with a freshly mopped kitchen in the background, the image of happiness, the smile on the face in the advertisement is covering all the labor, all the unpaid labor. We can't just accept the messaging about happiness, and then what happens when we start following that way of happiness, when we do take the path, of course, when we follow the path that we're told is going to lead us to happiness, and then we find the grapes are bitter. The fruit is rotten. They said that this is good. What's wrong with me? That these things aren't making me happy. So there's a thing that happens, affect alienation, right? When an object that's supposed to make you happy, that's supposed to be a necessary part of a happy life. Again, thinking about the recent presidential speech saying that religion might be necessary to make us happy, spoken by someone who seems to have zero religion. Absurd. But the messaging about happiness is very flat-footed, and it's controlling. It's controlling in a very obvious way. It's control. When we're taught, right? When all the shadows on the wall are telling us that happiness lies this way, and then we start going that way, and we find that this is not happiness. What do we do? So, one thing we might do is talk about it. One thing we might do is complain about it. One thing we might do is stop conforming. But what happens when that happens? What happens when that happens? It's not good for us. right? And if you start saying, hey, you know what? This way of living, this is not a happy life. I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about where happiness lies. I've been thinking about human flourishing, maybe in a very Aristotelian sense. I'm thinking about how to flourish. And I realized that this way that's been preached to me, that's been pitched to me, that's been sold to me, has nothing to do with my happiness. And maybe it has something to do with other people's happiness. All right, so what happens? Well, when we start talking about it, when we stop living that way, we, the agent, right? I mean, I say we, but I'm the demographic who's maybe least likely to experience this, aside from being a philosopher. We become objects of unhappiness ourselves. We become the angry black woman. We become the feminazi who's like the childless catwoman or something, who's obviously in the messaging very unhappy, very angry, and a problem for the people around them. I'm reminded of another Neil Young song, People Want to Hear About Love. That song is a protest song. Everything other than people want to hear about love is all the things that people don't want to hear about, but the things that people need to hear about. So when you stop accepting the happiness that our society tries to railroad us into, we become the problem, right? You become the problem when that happens, a problem for other people, right? I'm also remembering Seinfeld when George Costanza says that, if you want to look busy at work, just be angry all the time. Just be angry all the time. Is that good advice for a woman? Is that good advice for a racialized minority? No. Minority. No, it's not good advice because anger is going to be taken as a critique of the very institution or the very way of life that you're involved in there. Groups are dangerous. Organizations, institutions are dangerous because they will prefer the institution to even the mission of the institution, right? There's so many organizations will just cover up whatever they need to cover up to keep being able to do their mission and help people. Watch out. So you become a critic, now you're an outsider. Now you're the problem. Even in groups, I mean, you see how male all my references are. Ahmed gives us, passages from Audre Lorde and Mrs. Dalloway. It is great stuff. But we see how being dissatisfied, being unhappy can itself make you the problem. What to do about it? There might be a real possibility. Now let's consider this for a minute. There might be a real possibility that conforming, that taking the Stoic route and saying, hey, if I can't change the world, I change my desires. Conforming, just following the path and finding a way to make it happy for you, might be a better path to happiness than pursuing justice, than seeing through the bullshit and trying to judge your life based on what actually makes you happy. It might be a better path to happiness to just conform. It might. What happens? What happens if conforming? What happens if accepting other people's idea of happiness as your happiness and changing your desires? What happens if that is a better path to happiness? After all, fighting it sometimes gets you killed. We read that in Plato. We read that in Socrates' life. What happens? Well, if we are committed to the idea that happiness is what we're after, it's what everyone is after, and it's the only, greatest good that we all should be pursuing, and then we build an ethics around that and everything, what happens? Well, it does if happiness is the end-all be-all, then it could be that conforming is the way to go. So it then becomes kind of important to think, what else could we be after? What else? I mean, sure, be after happiness. And be after happiness, be after the happiness that you actually experience to make you happy, right? Pursue your own happiness for sure. It comes at a cost. And if you talk about the cost, that could make you even unhappier because the people around you could get, right? It comes at a cost, okay? So what do you do? What besides happiness is worth pursuing? And I really think that part of that answer has to be autonomy. You want to be yourself. You want to follow your own ends. Not the ends that people say are happy, not the ends that actually even lead to your happiness. Maybe your happiness isn't the best thing for you to be pursuing. Now, this sounds bold to say, you know what? Maybe there's something that ranks above happiness. Maybe we should pursue something else above happiness. It sounds like a bold statement, but in the history of philosophy, it's actually not that controversial. It comes up again and again. And one of the common ways to put this, I think, is it Mill? Does it go earlier than Mill? This, I don't know. It's better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied. I mean, isn't that part, at least, of Ahmed's point here? I mean, it sounds controversial to say that there's something to pursue above happiness. I mean, especially if you're drenched in Aristotelian ethics, like I kind of am. Aristotelian ethics near and dear to my heart, and it's for good reason. But it's better to be Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied, right? Just because, yeah, happiness is worth pursuing. It is worth pursuing. It's good to pursue. And understanding happiness maybe, tells us something about what is a virtue and what is a vice, what makes us stronger. But more than being happy, I think it's important to be yourself. More than being happy, it's important to actually have control over your life. And if you don't question where happiness lies, if you don't question at what cost am I willing to be happy, you're almost not even living your own life. You're living someone else's idea of happiness. And it may have nothing to do with what makes you happy. And it might, but even if it does, what if it's not yours, right? What if it's been put into your mind, right? It's been sold to you and you are just falling backwards, hopefully into a happiness laying behind you, that you're doing a trust fall into happiness, that your society, your parents, your schools tell you that's where happiness is. Fall back into it. No. See, right? Understand what's out there and make the decisions that you think are right for you. All right. Sara Ahmed, Killing Joy, Feminism and History of Happiness, or The Promise of Happiness. Check it out.